It was 2:47 a.m. when the phone rang. That sound that freezes your blood before you even answer. Brooke's voice was shaking, broken, saying words no parent should ever hear. "Adrian, Ethan's gone." In that half second, the world shifted. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. I just grabbed my keys and drove into the dark. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I used to think nothing scared me. I'd been shot at, ambushed, buried under sandstorms in countries that don't exist on maps. But hearing my ex-wife cry through a phone line made me realize I'd never known real fear until that night. The roads were empty, just the hum of the engine drowning out Brooke's voice replaying in my head. "He went with Victor to the lake. He never came back." She said it like it was just another tragedy on the evening news. But Ethan wasn't a name in a headline. He was my boy, my reason for everything. By sunrise, I reached their town, the place I once called home. I hadn't seen Brooke in 3 years. Her house looked the same, only colder. The police cars parked outside killed the last bit of hope I had left. When Brooke opened the door, she was shaking, mascara running down her face, wrapped in Victor's jacket. The man who replaced me, standing behind her like a savior in disguise. He nodded at me, calm, rehearsed, as if he was the grieving father too. "Adrian," Brooke whispered. "They found him near the lake." I stepped past her without a word. The detective leading the case, Officer Nolan, gave me that pity look I'd seen too many times in combat zones. "Accidental drowning," he said. "No signs of struggle." I looked at Victor. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just clenched his jaw as if waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. In the Navy, we're taught to listen before we strike. Observe. See what others miss. So that's what I did. I listened. Watched. Every detail. The wet cuff of Victor's jeans. The faint scratch on his left hand. The way he placed his arm around Brooke just a little too tightly, as if protecting her from me. The rest of that day moved like a blur. The investigation was quick. Too quick. They ruled it an accident by noon. I asked for a deeper probe, but the coroner, a friend of Victor's firm, called it unnecessary trauma. Brooke wouldn't meet my eyes. I could see guilt clinging to her face like a shadow she couldn't wash off. Every whisper, every movement in that house screamed wrong. When they closed the case, I didn't argue. I simply nodded, thanked the officers for their time, and walked to the lake myself. It was quiet, painfully quiet. The water barely rippled, reflecting the orange glow of a dying sun. And there, in the mud near the shore, I noticed something blinking faintly. Ethan's small digital wristwatch. Still ticking. I dropped to my knees. That's when the soldier inside me came alive again. Not for war, but for truth. I remembered the last time Ethan wore that watch, on his birthday. Victor had given it to him, sitting right across from me at the diner, smiling in that smug way only stepfathers do. I should have known then. When I walked back to my truck, I pulled my phone from my jacket and opened an old contact list I swore I'd never use again. Brothers from my SEAL days who now wore badges and suits, the kind of men who could peel back the lies beneath accidents. "Mason," I said when he answered, "I need a favor. My son's gone, and I don't buy the story they're selling." There was a long silence on the line. Then his voice, low and steady. "Send me everything you've got." That night I sat alone in my truck, staring at a photo on the dashboard. Me, Brooke, and Ethan. We looked like a family before pride and betrayal destroyed it. She left me because I'd seen too much darkness. Now she lived inside it. When I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan smiling, calling me his hero. In that moment, I swore something I hadn't sworn since my last mission overseas. Not to kill, not to destroy, but to uncover everything. Quietly, completely, no matter how deep it went. Brooke's new husband didn't just take my son's life. He took the only reason I had left not to fight. And that's when it hit me. Victor thought he buried a child. He didn't realize he awakened a father who spent years learning how never to lose. Morning came heavy and cold. I hadn't moved all night. The sun rose over the same town that used to hold my happiest memories. Now, it felt like enemy territory. People walked their dogs, grabbed coffee, smiled at each other, completely unaware that a father sat alone in his truck, staring at a lake that had swallowed his entire world. When I finally stepped out, I noticed Victor's SUV parked 2 houses away from Brooks' driveway. He was standing outside, chatting with the neighbors, calm and steady, like a man completely untouched by tragedy. The way he hugged people, held Brooks' hand, even wiped her tears, it all looked perfect, too perfect. It made my skin crawl. The police had already cleared everything, sealed their reports, and filed it away as an unfortunate case. But nothing about it felt unfortunate. It felt arranged, quietly packaged, and delivered to avoid headlines. Victor came from money. Real estate, construction, donations to local campaigns. The kind of man whose smile bought him innocence. I stayed behind the main street, at a distance, just watching him. Years of training kick in when you go silent. Every habit, every instinct sharpens. He was hiding something, not just guilt, something bigger. The more I stared, the more I realized he wasn't acting like a stepfather in grief. He was acting like a public figure managing damage. Brooke walked toward him with a folder clutched to her chest. Legal documents, maybe. He pulled her close and whispered something. She nodded without looking up. My stomach twisted. I knew that look. That was fear. It lives in the eyes of someone who's seen what their partner is truly capable of. Later that afternoon, I drove to the precinct to talk to Officer Nolan again. He kept his tone polite but detached. I understand your pain, sir, he said. But there's nothing further we can dig up unless you bring us hard evidence. I leaned closer. That's exactly what I intend to do. He hesitated before sliding a piece of paper across the desk. Between you and me, the case file feels premature. But orders came from above. Those 5 words hit like a bullet. Orders came from above. Someone powerful didn't want the case open. As I left, I noticed Victor's name listed as a public donor on the police charity wall. Something about that plaque burned my lungs with anger. I took a photo of the file number before walking out. That night, I reached Mason again through an encrypted call. I'm sending you data. Dig into Victor Hale, any partners, offshore accounts, or law enforcement links. Something here stinks. He exhaled through the line. You sure you want to do this, Adrian? There's no turning back. I lost my son, Mason. There's nothing else left to turn back to. While he worked through his channels, I drove to the lake again. I needed to see the water one more time. Not for comfort, but for clues. The investigation team hadn't cleaned up completely. Near the far dock, tire marks cut into the soft dirt. I crouched, running my hand across the ground, feeling 2 sets of prints, Brooke's small shoe size and a larger one. Victor's. The problem was, both pointed away from the water, not toward it. That single detail changed everything. I grabbed my phone and started recording my surroundings, noting the direction, timing, and approximate distance to the road. My gut told me the drowning story was planted. My boy didn't fall accidentally. He was carried. Around midnight, Mason called back. His tone shifted, serious. You're right. Victor's connected to a judge, a coroner, and a private security firm you won't find listed under his name. Quiet money moves between them every month. I felt it in my bones. The truth was right there, circling me like a shark waiting for the right moment to surface. Brooke called later that night. Her voice cracked as she asked me to stop digging. She said I was hurting everyone. I didn't answer. I just listened to her words die in silence. She wasn't calling as a mother grieving. She was calling as a woman terrified of losing her new world. After she hung up, I sat alone in the dark and thought about all the years we spent together. How she used to laugh when Ethan would run around the kitchen wearing my seal cap. How she said I was too serious for a normal life. Maybe she was right. Maybe this world had no place for men like me. But the world had no right to take my son either. 2 days later, Mason's contact, a retired detective named Grant, met me in a diner off the highway. He brought a thin folder of documents and a grim face. Watch your step, he warned before even sitting down. Victor's got reach. He's got friends who erase problems, not solve them. I flipped through the file quietly. A collection of income records, local complaints, and one chilling detail. Victor was under quiet scrutiny 5 years ago for a domestic abuse case that never saw the light of day. The note at the bottom said, "Dismissed due to insufficient evidence." Grant leaned closer. "You're not chasing a man, Adrian. You're chasing a system that protects him." I stared at the folder's last photo. Victor, standing proudly at a charity gala beside the same chief who closed Ethan's case. My hands tightened around the paper. "Then we exposed the system." Grant smiled faintly. "That's going to take more than rage." "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "I'm awake." That night, I parked near Brooke's house again. Through the window, I saw Victor holding her phone, maybe checking her messages, maybe deleting them. Brooke looked small, fragile, cornered, but she still wore the necklace Ethan gave her, a small blue heart pendant. That tiny shimmer through the window told me she hadn't lost everything yet. In that moment, I realized I didn't just have to uncover what Victor did. I had to free the person still trapped beside him. The woman who once shared my life, now living under his silence. The game had changed. I wasn't hunting revenge anymore. I was building justice, quietly, one truth at a time. Time changed after Ethan's death. Days felt longer, nights sharper. The quiet moments between dawn and sunrise became the only hours where my mind stayed clear, where I could think without the noise of grief. But lately, even the silence started to sound different, almost like the truth whispering to me through the cracks. Mason's contact, Grant, had given me something that made my pulse freeze: the GPS trip log from Victor's SUV. On the day of Ethan's accident, the tracking showed a 1-hour blackout in the system. The official report said the car was parked by the lake the entire time, but the data told another story. From 4:30 to 5:27 p.m., the signal vanished off the grid. Then it mysteriously reappeared near the old Miller Creek Highway, 20 miles north of the lake. An hour missing, 20 miles hidden. That was my starting point. I drove out there before noon. The air smelled of wet pine and dead leaves, just like the woods behind my childhood home. I followed the coordinates, and when I finally reached the narrow dirt path off the highway, my headlights caught a glimpse of broken branches, a sign of a vehicle forcing its way through recently. My gut turned heavy. I parked a quarter-mile away and walked the rest on foot, letting instinct lead me. Years in the SEALs teach you that nature remembers violence. You just have to listen. Near a curve where the ground dipped, I saw something. Deep tire marks filled with stale rainwater, and beside them, what looked like faint drag lines heading toward the trees. I knelt beside it, running my hands slowly along the dirt. The pattern wasn't random. Someone had pulled something heavy, a body, or maybe a bag. My breath caught when the sunlight hit something small sticking out of the soil. I brushed away the dirt until I saw it. A tiny, blue plastic car. Ethan's favorite toy. The one I buried with him when they lowered his coffin. My chest tightened as if someone had set a trap inside my lungs. I stared at that little car, realizing everything I feared was true. My son didn't drown. That night, I sent Mason photos of the scene and coordinates. He didn't respond immediately. When he did, his message was short. "I need 48 hours. Don't draw attention." But patience is easier in war than in grief. By midnight, I couldn't shake the sound of Victor's calm, smug voice replaying in my mind. The perfect husband. The perfect father. The perfect lie. I drove to his construction firm the next morning. His building sat at the edge of downtown, with tinted glass and a flag waving high. I walked in pretending to be a potential client, keeping my voice steady. Behind the reception desk hung a framed newspaper clipping. Local developer donates to Orphan Care Foundation. His photo beside kids who never knew he stole one from me. I didn't stay long. I only needed to scan his surroundings, memorize his patterns. He walked out around noon, phone glued to his ear, wearing the same expression he had at the funeral: detached, efficient, rehearsed. Watching him now, I wasn't looking at a man anymore. I was looking at a mask that learned how to breathe. Later that evening, I drove back to the lake. Under the fading sun, two teenagers fished near the dock. One of them pointed at a spot further down. They said a cop found a broken chain there last week, he muttered to his friend. Like part of a dog leash. A chain. My heart sank again. Victor had told the police that Ethan followed their dog near the water and must have slipped. That chain wasn't from a leash. It was what held him down until he stopped breathing. I sat in my truck, staring across the water, fighting every instinct I had not to explode right there. But I remembered Mason's voice on the phone. Don't burn him fast. Watch him rot slow. The next step was finding who cleaned the evidence. No man like Victor acts alone. I started tracing his close contacts, contractors, drivers, and staff. Through Mason's connections, I found one who had quit 2 days after my son's death. His name was Colin Marks, a part-time mechanic at Victor's firm. I tracked him down in a neighborhood on the edge of town. The man looked broken when I mentioned Victor's name. He told me he was ordered to clean the SUV that night. He said the back seat was soaked. They told him the fluid was spilled wine from a picnic accident. He didn't believe it. When he asked questions, he got threats. He quit the next morning. That was the first real breakthrough. I told him to stay silent, to vanish if needed. He nodded, eyes wide, like a man who'd seen what happens when you stand too close to evil. By the time I returned home, a storm had rolled over the town. Rain drummed on the roof. Thunder roared across the horizon. I sat there, the small blue car in one hand, Ethan's wristwatch in the other. The ticking sound had never stopped. My son's voice still echoed in my head. His laugh, his calling me Dad the way only he could. And in that thunder, I heard something I hadn't felt since deployment, the calm before the strike. 1 hour went missing from Victor's schedule. But that single hour held the weight of everything I'd lost. And I was going to fill it, second by second, truth by truth, until nothing was missing anymore. The days after finding Ethan's toy car felt like walking through fog. Nothing looked solid, yet everything hurt. Mason's updates were brief. He was digging into Victor's accounts, but even he admitted the man had buried his tracks like a professional. I didn't need to wait for proof anymore. I already carried it. The mud on my hands, the toy in my pocket, and the silence in Brooke's eyes. Silence, it can be more violent than words. I drove to her house on a cold Friday evening, knowing she wouldn't be expecting me. Brooke had always been a careful woman, too careful since she married Victor. When she opened the door, she froze like she'd seen a ghost. She looked smaller than before, fragile, like life had been draining piece by piece since the lake. I just want to talk, I said quietly. No shouting. She hesitated, looking over her shoulder, then stepped aside. Inside, the air felt heavy, scented faintly with wine and lavender. The picture of Ethan that once stood on the living room shelf was gone. Only a faint dust ring marked where it used to be. Brooke sat down, avoided eye contact, her voice trembling. You shouldn't be here, Adrian. Victor doesn't. She stopped mid-sentence, corrected herself. He'll be home soon. Then we have a few minutes, I said, setting the small blue car on the table. Recognize it. She stiffened instantly, every bit of color draining from her face. It wasn't the reaction of a mother seeing a lost toy. It was the reaction of someone caught between guilt and fear. Where did you get that? She whispered. Near Miller Creek Highway, I said. 20 miles from the lake you told police about. She stared at the floor, her fingers twisting a napkin to shreds. I didn't speak again. I just waited. Years of interrogations taught me one thing. Silence forces truth out faster than threats. Finally, her breathing broke. He told me Ethan fell. He said he carried him to the car to get help, but by the time they reached the lake, it was too late. He said Ethan was already gone. Her voice cracked, and tears slid down her cheeks. He swore he'd handle it, so I wouldn't have to watch his body pulled from the water. And you believed him? She nodded slowly, sobbing into her hands. I wanted to. I didn't want to think the man I married could hurt a child. I clenched my jaw, every muscle fighting to stay calm. So you let her son's death become a story. Her head dropped. She slid a small black flash drive across the table. Victor made me copy the police report. He kept it hidden in his office safe. But there's more. He deleted messages from my phone that night. He said the truth would ruin us both. She looked up, her eyes red and pleading. Please don't do anything stupid. I pocketed the flash drive and stood. Too late. As I turned toward the door, her voice trembled behind me. He didn't mean to. Ethan said something that made him angry. He called him. Not my real dad. The words hit me like a spear to the chest. For a second, the walls closed in. I could see Ethan's face in my mind, brave enough to speak truth even at 7 years old. I swallowed the pain deep down where it couldn't make me weak. Then the sound of tires outside shattered the moment. Brooke's eyes widened with panic. He's home, she whispered. Please go before he... Too late again. The black SUV door slammed shut. Through the window, I saw Victor step out, still wearing his immaculate jacket, his tie loosened as if grief was just another routine he managed. His calmness always sickened me, the way he made tragedy look civilized. I slipped through the back hallway quietly, out the kitchen's rear door, moving like a shadow through the yard. Years of training taught me how to exit unseen, but the rush of adrenaline brought the old instincts back sharper than ever. From the shadows by the fence, I watched him enter. He paused at the doorway, kissed Brooke's head, poured himself a drink. All performance. She smiled like a hostage, pretending the gun wasn't pressed to her back. As I left the property, something deep inside me changed, like a switch pulling me into a quieter, colder place. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was focused. Back at my apartment, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The screen blinked alive with encrypted folders. Mason's decryption tool made quick work of them. Inside were correspondence logs between Victor and a local coroner, arranged payments labeled as consulting. Attached voice notes confirmed what I already knew. Ethan's autopsy was falsified. No water in the lungs. No bruising consistent with drowning. The cause of death, blunt impact trauma. They rewrote everything before it left the morgue. For nearly an hour, I just sat in silence, staring at the file, listening to the ticking of that small wristwatch I kept beside me. It hadn't stopped once since the day they pulled Ethan from the mud. It was still keeping time, while my boy had none left. I sent the files to Mason. His reply came fast. You just found the crack. Stay low. Don't trust anyone near the case. But staying low was never something I was good at. Not when injustice screamed louder than my own heartbeat. The rain started again, soft and steady. I watched it fall through the window, thinking how life could still look peaceful from a distance, even when everything inside it was burning. In that moment, I understood something about Brooke. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was survival. She lived next to a man who built his life like a cage, beautiful on the outside, deadly within. She wasn't innocent, but she was trapped. And maybe, just maybe, saving her would bring me closer to saving the last part of my soul that still believed in forgiveness. But not yet. First, I needed Victor to expose himself, the way only cowards do when they think they've already won. It had been 3 nights since Brooke's confession, and even now, I could still hear her voice trembling through my head. The sound of guilt always lingers longer than any scream. Victor's world looked the same on the outside. Business meetings, charity posts, newspaper smiles. But behind that polished mask, cracks had started forming. The kind of cracks a man like me could crawl through. I drove toward the outskirts of the city, back to a place I swore I'd never return. The private training ground owned by my old SEAL commander, Mason Kane. The gravel crunched beneath my tires, gravel that had once soaked in sweat, gunpowder, and grit. Before I'd even stepped out, Mason was already standing by the door, older now, slower, but his eyes still sharp as a hawk's. He didn't ask questions at first. He just looked at me and said, "You've got that storm look again, Adrian. Thought you buried it when you retired." "I thought so too," I said quietly. But storms don't die. They wait. Inside his cabin, the air smelled of wood smoke and steel polish. Mason poured coffee and set it on the table between us. You sent me the files, he said finally. Corruption that high up doesn't fall easy. You sure you want to drag this fight into daylight? I'm not here to start a war, I said. Just to end one that took my son. Mason studied me for a long second, then nodded. Then you'd better remember your oath. Not the one to the flag, the one to control. We aren't executioners, Adrian. We're architects. You take them down piece by piece until the foundation collapses under them. That was what I needed to hear. His words reminded me of the discipline I'd lost chasing rage. I didn't need bullets. I needed truth. Truth that could fracture Victor's shield from within. Mason slid a folder across the table. Here, Victor's shell companies. Hidden funds under names you wouldn't notice. He's laundering through kids' charities and offshore construction projects. You get this in front of the right people, his perfect image will burn. I flipped through the pages. Fake invoices, signed donations, even manipulated death benefit claims under victim children's names. Ethan's own file sat on the last page, labeled as Charity Beneficiary Case Number 0421. My breath hitched for a second. That monster had turned my son's death into a write-off. Mason kept talking, his voice steady. I helped a journalist once, an honest one. HarperCollins. She runs a small truth blog now, but she's got government eyes reading her work. Send her what you find, and she'll make sure it spreads. I nodded. I'll do that. But first, I need to make sure Victor hangs himself. Mason smirked faintly. That's what I was hoping you'd say. He reached into a drawer and handed me a small USB drive. This holds a digital spider, a code that latches onto any network you feed it. You plant it in his system, and it'll mirror everything. Emails, calls, hidden accounts, all of it. Just don't get caught. Leaving that cabin, I felt something I hadn't felt since Ethan's smile, clarity. There was no chaos in me now, only direction. Back in town, Victor's world kept spinning like nothing was wrong. The morning paper showed his photo beside the mayor, smiling as they cut ribbons for a charity playground. I couldn't help but stare. He was building monuments out of broken lives. That night, I parked near his firm's office. The building's security was tight, but I'd been trained to blend with shadows long before he ever bought his first lock. I slipped in through the maintenance gate, bypassed the cameras using Mason's trick, and followed the faint hum of servers in the basement. Inside the small server room, machines pulsed like a heartbeat. I plugged Mason's drive and waited. The lights flickered as the virus spread invisibly through the system. Within a minute, Victor's empire began to unravel in silence, file by file, like a house made of glass under pressure. I was almost out when motion flickered on the side camera, headlights approaching the rear lot. My stomach dropped. Someone was here. Footsteps echoed above. Lip of a boot heel, heavy, confident, not random security. Victor himself. He wasn't supposed to be there. I ducked behind a column just as the elevator doors hissed open. His voice filled the concrete room, calm and low, talking on the phone. No, I'm not worried. The story's buried. The father's broken. He won't do a damn thing. He was wrong. When he walked past my hiding spot, I caught sight of his expression in the half-light. No sorrow, no regret, only arrogance. He stopped for a moment, staring at the servers as though checking if ghosts still obeyed him. Then he left, locking the place behind. As soon as the sound of his engine vanished, I stepped out, took a deep breath, and shut down the system. Mason's code had already copied everything. Victor's secrets now lived in my pocket. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Mason. You've got company. Someone's been tailing your house since sunrise. Move locations now. I peered through my blinds. Down the street, a silver sedan idled quietly. Inside, a silhouette with a camera lens glinted toward me. My jaw clenched. Victor had set his web, but what he didn't realize was, I used to build traps in deserts where no one came back out. I grabbed my keys, the drive, and the photo of Ethan from my dashboard. Before leaving, I whispered a promise only the ghosts could hear. You took my peace, Victor. Now I'm taking your world. The hunt wasn't about rage anymore. It was about legacy, the kind that outlives monsters and reminds them that justice doesn't need noise to make them fall. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days, as if the sky itself was trapped under the same heaviness buried in my chest. Every drop hitting the window reminded me that time was running out. Not for me, but for Victor. Mason's code had given me everything: bank records, surveillance notes, deleted emails, and even a message chain between him and the chief of police. It was enough to crush his empire. But power doesn't fall quietly, and no monster ever dies without one last trick. It started the following morning. I woke to a hard knock at my door. 2 officers, their hands already resting near their holsters. Behind them, my neighbor stood at a distance, eyes wide, whispering to another. The older officer stepped forward. Mr. Hale, we have a warrant to search your home. Reports of illegal chemicals stored in the premises. For a second, the world spun in slow motion. Chemicals? The word sank deep. This wasn't random. It was precision. This was Victor's move. I stepped aside calmly and let them in. They tore through every drawer, every shelf, every corner of my garage. I stayed silent, leaning against the wall while rain bled down the window. Then an officer called out, lifting a small metal container marked with yellow tape. I'd never seen it before. The lead cop turned to me, his eyes cold but unsure. Sir, you care to explain what this substance is? My silence was louder than any denial I could give. They wanted a reaction: anger, resistance, chaos. But I wasn't giving them the satisfaction. I'd played these games on foreign soil, watching insurgents build false evidence, twist public view, frame soldiers for crimes they never committed. I knew this rhythm too well. So, I nodded faintly. Finish your job, I said. Then let me call my lawyer. After 3 long hours, they left with their evidence sealed tight in a black case. No arrest yet, just suspicion. But the trap was set. By evening, a local headline popped up online. Former Navy SEAL under investigation for illegal explosives. Source claims mental instability. Victor's fingerprints were nowhere on the story, but his voice was all over it. That's how men like him operate. They don't shoot you. They make you pull the trigger yourself. That night, I called Mason. It started, I told him. He didn't sound surprised. Then you're hitting the nerve, he said. He's panicking. When men like Victor start throwing mud, it's because they're afraid of drowning. The next morning, another message came through an anonymous number. You can't protect what you've already lost. It ended with a photo, a surveillance shot of Mason's cabin. For a full minute, I just stared at that image, letting the weight of it settle. He wasn't just targeting me anymore. He was traveling through the people who helped me. I packed everything: flash drives, hard copies, and evidence Mason sent earlier, and relocated to an old fishing cabin just outside city limits. It was a small wooden box beside a river, a place where sound disappeared under the noise of moving water. Perfect for ghosts. There, I opened Mason's files again. One folder caught my attention: Children's Hope Foundation. Victor's name didn't appear, but every financial thread tied back to him through shell companies. He used dead children's charity funds to finance his construction empire and bribe his legal protection. Ethan wasn't his mistake. He was Victor's liability. By evening, I couldn't hold the silence anymore. I texted Brooke from a burner phone, a simple message. He framed me. Stay quiet. Protect yourself. She didn't reply, but an hour later I saw her car parked outside a pharmacy downtown, her silhouette sitting still inside. She stared at her reflection, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. When she finally started her engine, her eyes caught my car's reflection in the glass. She didn't drive away. She just looked toward me and nodded once. That single gesture, it was enough. Maybe she finally saw Victor's truth too. The next day brought a break I hadn't expected. Mason's code flagged a set of outbound transactions from Victor's firm, payments sent to a private data cleanup company. One of their employees, Grant's old contact, still owed me a favor. Through him, I got access to a decrypted folder labeled Operation Wolfhound. Inside were photos, blurry, grainy, but one stood out. Victor talking to the chief of police at an old quarry outside town. A meeting that took place hours before the search warrant was issued for my home. That was the proof I needed. I compiled everything into one file, encrypted it twice, and sent it across to Mason. If anything happens to me, give it to Harper, I wrote. Make her bury him in his own lies. Late that evening, while staring at the pouring rain outside the cabin, headlights cut through the darkness. My muscles tightened automatically. But it wasn't police. It wasn't Mason. The car was smaller. Brooke stepped out slowly, umbrella trembling in her hand. She walked up to the porch, eyes hollow but determined. I know what he did, she said before I could speak. And I can't keep living in that house pretending he's human. I watched her shake in the cold, her voice barely above a whisper. He knows you're getting close. He said anyone who helps you disappears. I looked at her for a long moment and finally said, then disappearing's the only way left to be free. For the first time since Ethan's death, she broke down in my arms, not out of guilt, but from release. She handed me a phone wrapped in cloth. It's his. He doesn't know I took it. I turned it on carefully, scrolling through encrypted chats. Words appeared, conversations with a judge, payoffs, schedules, and one message that made my heart stop. Clean the seal. If he moves again, make it permanent. That was the line between fear and fire. Victor's war had just gone personal, and I had everything I needed to end it quietly. I stepped outside, rain dripping from the edge of my jacket, Brooke's phone in one hand, Ethan's watch ticking in the other. Somewhere in that rhythm, between the drops of rain and the ticking seconds, I found calm again. Victor thought he framed me. He didn't realize he had just signed his own confession. The storm outside had finally calmed, but inside that small cabin, everything still felt electric. Brooke sat across from me, soaked, pale, trembling, yet strangely resolved. The phone she had brought felt heavier than a weapon. It held years of Victor's secrets, his lies, and possibly the key to taking him down for good. I handed her a towel, and she just sat there, clutching it without moving. The silence between us was thick, full of guilt and exhaustion. For years, I'd wanted her to speak, to admit what she knew. Now, she was finally here, ready to help. And somehow, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the start of a war neither of us could walk away from. She finally spoke, her voice dry and brittle. He doesn't sleep anymore. Keeps checking windows, deletes calls, stares at the mirror like he's looking for something inside himself. I think he knows everything's slipping. You shouldn't have come, I told her. He'll notice. I don't care anymore, she whispered. I helped him destroy you once. I won't do it again. There it was. The admission I never expected to hear. And yet, instead of anger, all I felt was an old familiar ache. Brooke wasn't the same woman who'd betrayed me. She was someone else now, haunted, broken, maybe even punished enough by her own regrets. I set the phone on the table and began extracting the files. Mason had taught me how to pull deleted data from encrypted backups. It was tedious work, but patience was all I had left. Folder by folder, the truth began to appear. Conversations between Victor and a man named Judge Callahan, payments listed as discretion fees, and strings of messages with the same chilling pattern. Talk about removing obstacles, clearing witnesses, controlling outcomes. Each line of text was another nail in Victor's coffin. One message from 6 months ago caught my attention. Custody hearings are a formality. Handle the mother, keep the boy away from the seal. Stability matters more than truth. Brooke looked away. He bribed the judge, didn't he? Every ruling, every decision. He built safety in paperwork, I said softly, and used you to make it legal. She closed her eyes tightly, and I let him. Sometime around midnight, I stepped outside to get air. The wind had died down. Clouds broke apart, scattering thin moonlight over the forest. For a moment, I thought about Ethan, how he used to trace shapes in the stars with his little fingers, calling each one a secret mission. I wondered what he'd think if he saw me now. His father fighting not with guns, but with patience and truth. When I returned inside, Brooke was asleep on the couch, her body curled small, her hand gripping Ethan's toy car I'd left on the table. I'd forgotten it there, but maybe she needed to hold a piece of him one last time. The next morning, the air changed again, sharp, urgent. Mason's name flashed on my phone. "They're raiding Victor's office," he said quickly. "Someone leaked partial evidence. Not all of it, but enough to trigger an audit." That made no sense. I hadn't sent anything yet. Only 3 people had those files: me, Mason, and Brooke, unless Victor had somehow detected Mason's code. I turned to her, and for a terrifying instant, I thought maybe she'd betrayed me again. But when she looked up, confused by my expression, I saw only fear. "I didn't tell anyone," she said quickly. "I swear." Before I could respond, my computer beeped. A new file had appeared on its own. Mason's tracking script sent it automatically, a live alert from Victor's internal feed. It showed a video still from one of his firm's security cameras. Brooke gasped. It was Victor, in his office, pacing. Behind him, a body lay on the ground. His lawyer, Felix Grant. Blood on his shirt, head against the desk corner. Victor's voice came through the audio, low and panicked. "You leaked it, didn't you? You sold me out to him." I recognized that tone. It was the same calm rage I'd seen the day I buried Ethan. Victor's world was cracking fast. "We need to move these files to someone untouchable," I told Brooke. "A journalist, maybe." Mason mentioned a name, HarperCollins. "She can burn this story down completely." Brooke nodded. "Do it. But hurry, he's not going to stop now." By evening, the footage of Felix's death reached Mason's network through anonymous upload. Within hours, whispers began to circulate online. Reports hinted at corruption, missing charity funds, and alleged witness tampering inside Victor's company. His face, once pristine on magazine covers, now glared back as an emblem of scandal. I thought we were finally ahead. But around 10 p.m., Brooke's phone buzzed again. One message, untraceable, burned across the screen. "You think you can run from me? Look behind you." Her breath caught. We turned toward the window. Outside, through the sheet of fading daylight, flames rose from the direction of her home, the reflection flickering red across the cabin's glass. The fire wasn't spreading randomly. It was exact, clean, surgical. Victor's way of erasing history. Brooke sank to the floor in shock, whispering her son's name, her voice breaking. All gone, every memory, every photo. I knelt beside her, grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. He can burn houses. He can bury evidence. But he can't touch the truth anymore. You understand? It's already living in too many places now." She looked at me through wet eyes. "You promise he won't win?" "I don't make promises," I said quietly. "I finish missions." That night we relocated again, deeper into the hills, away from surveillance, away from the noise. The evidence went out under multiple aliases to 3 different news sites. Mason handled the backup pair. Harper received the original. When the first article hit the front page the next day, it spread like wildfire. Real estate tycoon under investigation for murder, political cover-up, and charity fraud. Victor didn't show up publicly for the next 48 hours. His company froze operations. The police issued a statement claiming they had secured new digital evidence. Brooke stood outside that cabin with me, watching morning light cut through the mist. Her face was still stained with sadness, but there was something else now, a spark of peace. She whispered, almost to herself, "He's losing everything, isn't he?" "Piece by piece," I said, "the same way he took it from us." But I knew him too well. Men like Victor didn't vanish into silence. They waited, cornered, feral. And a cornered man is the most dangerous kind. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wove through the hills. It could have been an ambulance, or it could have been a warning. The first part of Victor's empire had fallen. The next one would be his mask. The news broke like a grenade in the middle of Victor's empire. Every television screen, every local headline, Every whisper in every boardroom carried his name. Billionaire, murderer, liar. The story Harper published was relentless. His mask was torn to pieces, and the world finally saw the rot beneath it. But monsters like Victor never stand still when wounded. They evolve. It happened 3 days after the article went live. A huge fire ripped through one of his warehouses downtown, the same warehouse where he stored archived contracts. Investigators suspected arson. Witnesses said a man matching Victor's description was seen driving away minutes before the explosion. That same night, he vanished completely. No calls, no sightings, no trace of his black SUV. The official narrative called it suicide. Unable to bear public disgrace, Victor Hale may have taken his own life. Brooke read the headline out loud, her eyes wide, shaking her head. "He's not dead," she said. "He'd never end his story that way." I agreed. Victor wasn't built for endings. He was built for control. And when men like him disappear, it's not to escape judgment. It's to rewrite it. For the first time in weeks, the quiet around the cabin felt heavier. Mason called in, saying federal investigators were now closing in on the police chief and Judge Callahan. The dominoes were falling exactly as planned. But part of me couldn't rest. Victor's silence wasn't defeat, it was preparation. I started checking hotel registries across nearby counties using his old burner numbers from the data logs. 2 came up as recently active, one outside Austin, one near the Mexican border. It was the second one that made my gut twist. The payment method wasn't Victor's card, but one linked to his shell company, and the timestamp was less than 48 hours ago. When I told Brooke, she froze. "He's running," she whispered. "He wants people to think he's dead." Or, I said quietly, "He's moving somewhere the law can't follow." Mason arranged a contact in Texas, a former recon Marine named Preston who owed him favors. I sent what I had, and Preston started the groundwork there. Within a day, he confirmed a black SUV matching Victor's had crossed a private checkpoint into the southern ranch areas. So I packed and drove. Brooke stayed behind with Mason, safe but restless. As miles melted into dust under the wheels, I replayed Ethan's laughter in my head like a compass guiding me through the dark. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was closure, unfinished, inevitable, necessary. The Texas air was warm and dry, carrying a kind of silence that hides things well. Preston met me at a diner outside San Angelo. He slid a folder across the table. Hotel receipts, surveillance stills, fuel logs. "He's close," Preston said. "Running paper thin. Staying under aliases, paying cash. But there's something else. He's been meeting with someone using law credentials. Private law. Looks like he's trying to reopen some kind of custody archive." My chest tightened. Ethan's name. Again. Even in death, Victor was using my son's memory as a shield. Maybe his plan wasn't to vanish. Maybe it was to rewrite the narrative, to restore his image by painting himself as the grieving stepfather who lost everything. That night, while checking into a roadside motel, I saw the silver sedan again, the same one that had tailed my old house weeks ago. This time, it was parked across the street. Its headlights stayed off, but engine lights pulsed softly. I didn't approach. I just turned off my own lights and let the hours crawl by. At 3 a.m., it finally drove away. Morning came fast. I followed the trail Preston had marked, a converted ranch halfway between San Angelo and the border. When I arrived, I found signs of recent activity: empty fuel drums, cigarette butts, and fresh mud tracks leading into the field. At the far end stood a cabin, plain, quiet. Door half open, curtains swaying with the wind. Inside, dust and silence. A single chair overturned near the table. Plate still warm. Somebody left in a hurry. I circled back outside just as Preston's voice crackled through my radio. "You're not going to believe this. I just got a hit on Victor's passport. He used a fake ID early this morning to book a cargo flight to Laredo. He's escaping through Mexico," I said, scanning the empty horizon. But something about the table inside tugged at my mind. I went back in, studied the mess. and noticed a photograph lying under a shattered glass. Brooke, Ethan, and me, torn at the edge. He had been looking at it. That detail made everything worse. Victor wasn't running from me. He wanted me to follow. I stepped outside, sunlight burning through the clouds, and noticed something glinting from the dirt by the tire tracks. A bullet casing. Brand new. Not leftover. Placed. When I bent down to pick it up, a faint hum echoed in the distance. Drone surveillance. Somebody else was here. I moved back toward my truck, instincts fully alive again. Mason's voice came through faintly. Adrian, we've got chatter from federal lines. You're not the only one chasing him. Someone at the bureau flagged your name. They think you're running off-grid. Perfect, I said. That's exactly what he wants them to think. As the sun sank behind the hills, I looked out at the line of desert stretching southward. Somewhere beyond those dunes, Victor was still alive, building his final illusion. But I wasn't far behind. The man who thought he was untouchable was now a ghost running from the soldier who refused to die. And ghosts always leave footprints, even when they think they don't. The air in southern Texas carried that strange weight of silence before a storm, the kind of silence soldiers learn to read. It means something is about to happen. I could feel it. Victor's trail was close now. Too close. The fake passport hit confirmed he had passed through Laredo. But the part no one noticed was the signature used in the customs log. He didn't sign as Victor Hale. He used the name Felix Marino. Felix, the same lawyer murdered in his office days before he vanished. Victor wasn't just covering his tracks. He was wearing the skin of his dead partner to move freely. I met Preston at a diner a few miles from the border. Same routine as before. No lights, no cameras, quick coffee, quiet talk. He had managed to contact one of Felix's old associates who wanted to speak, a man named Miles Grant. No relation to my detective friend back home. Just another unlucky man who'd worked too long in Victor's shadow. He's paranoid, Preston warned. Says he's ready to talk, but only face to face. I told him you were coming. Where? I asked. He's hiding up north, in Wichita Falls. Told me Victor made him falsify more than one death certificate. He says he's got a recording that proves it. That was all I needed. I drove through the night. Every few hours, I'd stop to refuel, watching the reflections in the station windows, expecting headlights to appear behind me. Victor had eyes everywhere once. I couldn't be sure some weren't still alive. By dawn, I reached an abandoned service station just outside town. Miles was there, waiting near a rusted pickup, cigarette trembling between his fingers. His eyes darted around constantly, haunted by ghosts that followed him home too many nights. So, you're the SEAL, he said quietly. I'm the father, I replied. He looked me over, then nodded slowly. Then I guess you deserve to hear the truth. In the dim light, he told me everything. About the night Ethan died. How Victor had called Felix in a panic, claiming the kid hit his head by accident after an argument. How they moved the body to the lake to stage a drowning. How they bribed the coroner to falsify the autopsy. I stayed still while he spoke, my pulse steady but my vision burning. Every word tightened a coil deep inside my chest. Then he said something I didn't expect. Felix didn't want to go along with it at first. He told Victor he was done cleaning up his messes. That's why Victor killed him too. Miles swallowed hard. Felix recorded his own conversation with Victor before he died. He sent it to me that same morning, scared he wouldn't make it out alive. He reached into his jacket and handed me a small flash drive. That's what he died for. I took it carefully, sliding it into my pocket. Before I could ask anything else, a glint of movement caught my eye through the cracked glass door behind him. A black pickup slowing on the road. Did you tell anyone you were meeting me? I asked. Miles shook his head quickly, fear washing over his face. He dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot. He found us, didn't he? Get in your truck and drive east, I ordered. Don't look back. Do it now. He nodded and bolted for his truck. I stepped outside, my instincts taking command again. The black pickup eased closer, its windows dark. For a moment, everything went still. The smell of oil, wind, dirt, and fear mixing in the air. Then it stopped, 50 yards away. Driver's door opened. No one came out. It was bait. A message. When I checked the driver's side, I found a folded piece of paper taped to the steering wheel. No blood, no bullets, just 9 words written neatly in black marker. You keep chasing ghosts, you'll end up one. That was enough proof Victor was back in play. I contacted Mason through a secure channel and told him about the recording. He urged me to send it remotely, but I couldn't risk transmission. Not yet. Too many ears, I said. I'll bring it myself. He understood. Driving north again, I finally plugged the flash drive into my encrypted laptop inside a motel parking lot. The file name read echo_03. I pressed play. Felix's voice came first, nervous, shaky. Then Victor's, calm, deliberate, cold. From the recording, Felix pleaded, saying, "She's breaking down. Victor, Brooke can't hold this forever. You should come clean." Victor's answer made the blood in my veins turn to ice. "There is no coming clean, Felix. The boy didn't die because of me. He died because he couldn't understand who his real father was. And that man," a pause, a sharp breath, "that man deserves to feel what I felt when she chose him." The audio clicked off, ending in static. That last line was all I needed. His motive, his confession, every piece aligned like a weapon waiting to fire. But before I could secure the file, the motel's lights flickered twice. Power surge. My laptop screen blinked. The drive's contents began replicating automatically. Mason's code. It was uploading to the cloud server we'd hidden months ago. Then a new text flashed across my phone. "He knows where Brooke is." I didn't move for a long second. My heartbeat turned into thunder inside my skull. Victor was striking back, not through me, but through the only person left he knew could break me again. I threw my gear into the truck and hit the highway before the sun was fully up. The miles blurred as I tore back toward the safe house. Mason's voice came through the radio, tight and urgent. "Adrian, Brooke's safe for now, but there's movement near her area. Someone's watching her home from the ridge. You need to get here, now." "I'm on my way," I said, eyes locked on the road ahead. As I drove, the recorded voice still looped in my head, echoing like a curse. The boy didn't die because of me. He died because he couldn't understand who his real father was. Victor wasn't running anymore. He was circling back, and I was done chasing ghosts. It was time to face the living monster who created them. The drive back home felt like a war zone without bombs. My heart was beating fast, not from fear, but from the weight of everything tightening into its final moment. Every sign, every bump in the road, every gust of wind screamed that the story was close to its end. Victor had gone silent, not dead silent, but the kind that comes before the kill. Brooke was the target now. I knew it in my bones. She carried guilt, and guilt makes the cleanest bait for men like him. When I reached the outskirts of our old town, Mason was waiting in his truck, engine running. The night air was sharp, tasting of tension and burnt rain. "He's close," he said. 3 men seen on the ridge behind the cabin. Unmarked SUV. We traced one of the plates. Fake federal registration. Classic Victor setup. "Where's Brooke?" "Inside," Mason said. "We moved her to the basement. She's shaken, but safe for now." I looked at the trees swaying behind us, the dark outlines of tall pines hiding more silence than sound. It wasn't a question of if Victor would come tonight. It was when. I checked my weapon out of habit, though I prayed I wouldn't need it. I wasn't hunting blood. I was hunting truth. We positioned near the tree line, waiting. Minutes stretched into an hour. Then it happened. Headlights cut through the woods slowly, dimmed halfway, creeping along the dirt path. The familiar black SUV. He still drove it like a king returning to his throne. Victor stepped out, clean, composed, unshaken, even as his empire was crumbling. In the faint glow of the truck's interior light, I could see his eyes, calm, deliberate. The kind of calm that only comes when a man believes he still owns the ending. He looked toward the cabin, then past it, straight into the shadows where I stood. You really think hiding her out here makes you a hero again, Adrian? His voice broke the silence, sharp and almost conversational. He had no gun in his hand, just a folded piece of paper. You've been chasing stories, he said. But I built them. I stepped forward into the clearing. You're not building anything anymore. It's over. He laughed, low and humorless. Over? You think ruining my name on paper changes what I've done? You think they'll remember me as a villain? He tossed the paper to the ground. I'll still be the man she chose. You'll always be the shadow in her story. I kept walking until I was a few feet away, the moonlight stretching between us like a thin blade. She chose peace. She didn't realize you'd turn it into war. That made him flinch for the first time. A small flicker of something near human. But then the mask slipped back into place. He reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, pulling out a small voice recorder. You like evidence so much, Seal? Here's my confession. Maybe you'll sleep after hearing it. He pressed play. At first, nothing. Then static. Then his own voice, recorded somewhere long ago. Sometimes you don't plan to kill the thing that breaks you. It just happens, and then you clean up what's left. He stopped it. Satisfied? There's your closure. The anger crawling under my skin rose like a tide, but I held the line. I had learned through every loss that rage never gives you victory. It only blinds you to it. You're not confessing to me, I said quietly. You're confessing to yourself. Because you finally ran out of people to lie to. What came next happened in seconds. A car door slammed behind him. Brooke stepped out, flashlight trembling in her hand, tears glistening like glass in her eyes. Ethan deserved better than this, she said. Her words shattered whatever composure Victor had left. He turned sharply, voice cracking. You don't get to say his name. You let me believe. He stopped. That silence carried more guilt than any trial could prove. That's when Mason moved in. It's done, Victor. You're surrounded. Police are en route. For once, Victor didn't bluff. He didn't run. He just stared at the ground, as if seeing Ethan's reflection staring back from it. For a fleeting second, there was something almost sad about the way he whispered. You think prison will destroy me? It's too late for that. Then, in one clean motion, he reached for the gun tucked at the back of his belt. But I was faster. Training beats pride. My shot hit the ground a foot away from his boots. Don't, I said quietly. Don't give him the satisfaction, Mason. Let him live with it. The sirens grew louder, closing in, red and blue slicing through the trees. Victor stood still as the officers rushed in, their lights reflecting off the tears still on Brooke's face. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just turned once toward me and said, You didn't kill me, Adrian, but you buried yourself with me. He was wrong. When they cuffed him and led him to the car, I didn't feel the triumph I'd imagined all these nights. No joy, no relief, just air. A breath I hadn't taken since the day the phone rang. Brooke stood beside me, quiet. He's gone, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, but so is everything he ever built. Mason put a hand on my shoulder. You did it right. You didn't become him. As the sirens faded into the distance, I walked to the edge of the field. The first light of dawn was creeping over the horizon, slow and thin, cutting through the leftover mist. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Ethan's small wristwatch, still ticking. I set it down on the ground, just where Victor had stood moments before. Time doesn't stop for monsters, I said under my breath. It just runs out. The wind shifted, soft and clean, carrying the first hint of peace I'd felt in years. The courtroom was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your skin and doesn't let go. After months of digging through lies, chasing shadows, and surviving threats, we were finally here, ready to bring Victor Hale to the light he so desperately tried to avoid. Brooke sat beside me, holding Ethan's toy car tightly in her lap. The years of pain and betrayal seemed to fade away, replaced by a quiet resolve. The judge entered, solemn and steady, and the room settled like the calm before a storm's end. Victor didn't look like the man who had haunted my nights for so long. His face was gaunt, worn, stripped of all pretense. As the prosecution laid out the facts, the forged autopsy, bribed officials, the chilling recordings, his defenses crumbled one by one. Brooke testified, voice wavering but strong, painting the picture of a family shattered by secrets and lies. Her words carried the weight of a mother, a wife, and a woman finally finding the courage to speak truth. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts of murder, fraud, and obstruction, there was no celebration, only a collective exhale of long-held breath. Life imprisonment without parole. I felt the tight grip of justice settling like a stone in my chest. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the silence broken, the truth spoken, and the peace finally earned. Later, standing alone at Ethan's grave under a pale afternoon sky, I placed the toy car beside his small headstone. The sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light over the fresh dirt. I whispered, "You deserved so much more, kid. But maybe now everyone knows. Maybe now it's over." And then, as the wind brushed softly across the grass, a question lingered in the stillness. A question I hoped all of you watching would think about. When betrayal cuts deepest, how do you find the strength not just to fight, but to heal? If you're here, watching this story unfold, I want to know, where are you watching from? Which city or country holds your story? Drop a comment below and share. Hit like if this story touched you. Subscribe for more betrayal tales that dive deep into the heart of justice and revenge. Every story you want to hear, every secret you want revealed, I'll bring to light, tailored just for you. So tell me, what kind of stories move you the most? Emotional battles? Family secrets? Silent revenge? Let me know in the comments and I promise to deliver the next epic thriller you won't forget. Thank you for being with me on this journey. Until the next story, where betrayal and justice collide, stay strong, stay searching, and remember, sometimes the quietest battles leave the loudest echoes.